2015 together. The Town and Village Renewal Scheme is a key component in the revitalisation of towns and villages and sustaining our rural communities. The scheme was introduced in 2016, an allocation of €10 million in funding to 170 projects in its first year of operation. In 2017, as part of the Action Plan for Rural Development, I launched an enhanced Town and Village Renewal Scheme with a focus on projects that can bring a positive economic impact to our rural towns and villages. Under last year's scheme, I approved €21.6 million in funding to 281 projects. I launched a further round of the Town and Village Renewal Scheme in April of this year with an allocation of €15 million. The closing date for the submission of applications to my department is the 30th of June, and I anticipate that up to 200 further projects will be approved arising from this call for proposals. These projects will be completed over a 12 to 18-month period. In addition, my department provided €7 million in CLÁR funding to 231 projects in 2017. Over 400 applications have been received under this year's CLÁR programme, and I will be announcing details of the successful projects shortly. I also allocated €1.4 million to the Tidy Towns Committee throughout the country last year to mark the 60th anniversary of the competition in 2018. And I made €812,000 available towards the running costs of agricultural shows around the country. These shows attract many extra visitors to rural towns and villages. The new €1 billion Rural Regeneration and Development Fund, which was announced by the Government recently as part of the Project Ireland 2040, will provide an opportunity to deliver ambitious and integrated projects which will further support the revitalisation of our towns and villages. I will be announcing full details of this fund later this month. On the basis of the progress made to date, the target in the Action Plan for Rural Development to support the revitalisation of over 600 rural towns and villages over the period 2017 to 2020 will be met and exceeded. My objective is to ensure that the investment made in these towns and villages has a sustainable impact that will make them more attractive places in which to live, work and to visit.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Smith.
Very much, Minister, and I, being from a rural constituency, would say that your portfolio has to be one of the most important in terms of us as a country and nationally. The potential and the capacity for what your role and your remit, and particularly this particular scheme, Action Plan for Rural Development, has the capacity to do so much for towns and villages, because we have seen them stripped of services over years. We've seen post offices closing, Garda stations closing, shops closing, banks closing, but you, Minister, have it in your gift to put a fire in the belly of communities right across the country to see revitalisation and the renewal of those towns and villages. Minister, can I ask, of the €21.6 million that you allocated for 2017, how much of that are you going to meet your target, and will all of that money be spent? And what are your ambitions for the 2018 allocation in terms of, will you be making an increase on the Action Plan for Development around the country, or will it stay as it is? Minister, I'd also like to put to you about the CLÁR funding. You did a touch on it there. A school in my own community, Tunnyduff National School, so dependent on those kind of schemes, and we're into the summer months. They're breaking up for the summer. I do believe that the announcements were meant to be in the month of May. I would hope that you could clarify for us today when you will be making that announcement.
Deputy Pat Deering. Sorry.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister for introducing these schemes in the last couple of years. I think they've been a huge benefit to rural Ireland, be it the CLÁR schemes, be it the Town and Village Renewal schemes, and in particular the CIS and LIS schemes. They've been crucial schemes in particular in rural Ireland. But with regard to the Town and Village Renewal schemes, will there be a definite timescale for the money to be spent in this particular year? And also, Minister, will there be a definite funding stream on an annual basis? Will it be the same amount of money, or will it be a growing fund as we move on in the next period of time?
Thank you, Kecola. First of all, I want to thank the two deputies, and I just want to say, and I'm not going to be political, but in relation to a lot of the closures, we have had a lot of closures in the last number of years in relation to small shops. The small shops I find it very difficult with the internet and people, and what people forget sometimes is, and I see it in my own area, where a lot of small shops have closed, we have a lot of multinational companies coming in, and to me, sometimes that's not very good. I would prefer the small shops employing local people and employing people, but that's the way life has turned. In relation to schemes that you mentioned, in relation to the TAR programme, you have asked a very valid question, and I'm trying to get that scheme out as quickly as possible. You're quite correct. A lot of these programmes, particularly the CLÁR, is for lighting and different things, safety schemes for schools, and I know that they need to be notified fairly quickly. They'd like to get that work done between now and September, and I agree with you. So all I'd say to you is I'm really putting pressure on the department to try and get the announcements as quickly as possible. And as you know, within that programme, we have 3 different aspects of that scheme. So I will try and particularly get the safety scheme out as quickly as possible, because I know that work needs to be done when the schools are closed, and it's important. And the final thing, in relation to Deputy Deering and yourself, asked the same question, the Town and Village scheme. You asked the question whether there be further funding. I've sat down with the local authorities in relation, there's a guarantee now of a stream of funding for the next number of years. So whatever happens in the next few years, to be fair to local authority in relation to capacity, they weren't able to deliver some of these schemes because it didn't have funding for the years before. Now they know that there's going to be a continuation of funding over the next new number of years. They'll be able to put the capacity in, they'll be able to employ the people now, and these schemes will continue.
Thank you, Minister.
The Town and Village will be an 18-month scheme. We expect, if they get funding this year, that it will be spent in 2019.
Deputy Smith.
Minister, maybe if you could give us some answers just on terms of the have you met your targets in the money that you've allocated, that 20.6 million for 2016? Has that all been spent? Are we close to spending that? And in terms of, will you increase that fund for the Rural Action Plan for 2018? Finally, you mentioned it yourself there about towns and small shops being crucified by the big multinationals, but the big thing, broadband. And of course, it is a huge issue as well for you and your government in terms of revitalising towns and villages right across the country. And you're absolutely right, a lot of them have been put to the pin of their collar because of people buying online. But Minister, it's up to you and your government to make sure that broadband is in our small towns and villages, that they can actually compete with the multinationals, that they can actually compete with online buying. And your department, I think, plays a pivotal role in terms of putting the fire in the belly of communities in towns and villages right across the country.
Again, I think one of the big advantages of the Town and Village Renewal Scheme over the past couple of years, it has given communities another opportunity to re-engage with themselves, first of all, come together to formulate plans, which hasn't been missing for the past number of years. But I think the important point going forward is, I think you might have referenced in your previous answer, Minister, extra staff being available to assist the communities to put an action plan together, to put an application together, which is very important. But some of these applications can be very detailed at times, and assistance is required. So am I right to confirm, or you confirm, have you said, Minister, that there will be extra staff available at local authority level to assist communities in that regard? Have you mentioned that in your, I think I heard you saying that in your answer. Just to confirm that, Minister, because I think communities do require extra assistance to put an detailed application together, Minister.
Just 2 quick replies in relation to Deputy Smith. In 2016, I approved 9.8 million, and of that, 9.7 million was spent. So 92% of the money that was allocated was spent. In relation to Deputy Deering, that was one of the complaints I was getting from the local authorities. I met the County Managers Association. They were complaining that so much schemes came on top of them so quickly, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the guarantee that the funding was going to continue. So they know now, and I actually wrote to them, get them a time frame in relation to when the schemes would be open, when the schemes would be closed, when the schemes would be announced, so they now know that there will be a continuation of funding over the next number of years, and they can plan for that. They couldn't plan for it in the past. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes